Young Olympic cyclist vanished during a ride. 5 years later, his mother finds this on a road sign. The morning air bit cold against Joanne Prescott's cheeks as she stared at the empty trail stretching into the Colorado foothills. Her son should have returned hours ago. Her calls went straight to voicemail. His tracking app showed his last location frozen at a remote curve 15 miles from their home. Something was wrong. Liam Prescott wasn't just any 21-year-old. 8 months earlier, he'd stunned the cycling world by claiming silver at the Olympics, the youngest American to medal in road cycling in decades. Sponsors had swarmed afterward: energy drinks, sportswear, high-end bike manufacturers, all wanting a piece of the golden boy with the perfect smile and humble backstory. "He always rides this route on Tuesdays," Joanne explained to the search and rescue coordinator, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. 6 hours maximum. He's never late." The late October sun was already dipping behind the mountains as the first helicopter took off. By nightfall, 3 separate search teams combed the winding trails, their flashlights cutting through the darkness like desperate fingers grasping at nothing. At dawn, they found his bike. The $12,000 carbon fiber racing machine, emblazoned with sponsor logos and custom painted in Olympic silver, leaned gently against a pine tree, as if its rider had simply stepped away for a moment. No damage. No signs of struggle. Liam's water bottles remained half full, his energy bar wrapper neatly tucked into his jersey pocket, which still hung on the handlebars. "This doesn't make sense," the lead detective muttered, circling the scene. No crash. No blood. Not even scuff marks on the bike. The discovery transformed the search. What began as a rescue mission for an injured athlete became a manhunt rife with speculation. Kidnapping. Animal attack. Even the possibility that the cycling prodigy had simply walked away from fame and fortune. Joanne knew better. He wouldn't leave his bike, she insisted to anyone who would listen. That bike was like an extension of his body. As sports therapist who had worked with professional athletes for 15 years before retiring to support Liam's career, Joanne understood the connection between athlete and equipment. But police found the absence of struggle more telling than the abandoned bicycle. The media descended within hours. Satellite trucks clogged the narrow access road to the trailhead. Olympic hopeful vanishes screamed across headlines. Sports commentators who had praised Liam's discipline now questioned what secrets might have driven him to flee. Former competitors whispered about pressure, about performance-enhancing drugs, about the crushing weight of expectations. Joanne watched in horror as her son transformed from person to story before her eyes. "He called me before his ride," she told the detective leading the case, an older man named Hargrove with kind eyes and a methodical approach. "He sounded normal. Happy even. Said he had an idea for improving his descent technique." "Mrs. Prescott," Hargrove said gently, "sometimes the people closest to someone are the last to see what's troubling them." But Joanne had spent every day with Liam since his father abandoned them when he was 7. She'd been mother, father, coach, and confidant. She knew her son's habits, his dreams, and his demons. She knew the way he bit his lip when concentrating, how he tapped his left knee 3 times before starting every race, a ritual connecting him to the grandfather he'd never met, also a cyclist. 3 weeks into the search, authorities scaled back operations. 3 months in, the lead detective was reassigned. 6 months after Liam vanished, only Joanne maintained a daily vigil at the search headquarters she'd established in their garage. The wall behind her desk became a map of possibilities: satellite images marked with colored pins, timeline charts, witness statements, weather reports from the day of disappearance. His sponsors initially funded private investigators but gradually withdrew support as the mystery deepened and their investment yielded no returns. "You need to prepare yourself," Liam's coach, Martin Reeves, told her 1 year after the disappearance. "The wilderness out there, a million things could have happened." But the wilderness had been searched. Every ravine, every outcropping, every possible place a body might be concealed. No clothing fibers. No DNA. Nothing. As the second anniversary approached, most people spoke of Liam Prescott in the past tense. The Olympic Committee held a memorial service. A small plaque was installed at the trailhead. In memory of Liam Prescott, silver medalist and son of these mountains. But Joanne knew what others didn't. 3 days before he vanished, Liam had asked a strange question while they prepared dinner. "Mom," he'd said, chopping vegetables with precise, athletic movements, "do you remember those symbols I used to draw in my journals? The spiral with the notches? Your secret code," she'd replied with a smile. "From when you were 12 and planning to run away to France to join the tour." He'd laughed but didn't elaborate further. Now, staring at the empty trail stretching into the distance, those words echoed in Joanne's mind like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Her son wasn't finished. He was out there somewhere. And she would find him, no matter how long it took. The 5th anniversary of Liam's disappearance arrived with the same crisp October air that had haunted Joanne's dreams for 1,826 nights. Her once vibrant home on the outskirts of Boulder had transformed into a shrine to absence. Liam's silver medal hung in what was still called his room, though dust had settled on the collection of cycling trophies and the bed remained untouched. Joanne's transformation was equally stark. At 52, her athletic frame had grown gaunt, her once stylish brown hair now streaked with gray and often unwashed. The sports therapy practice she had built over 20 years was gone, sold piece by piece to fund private investigators who delivered nothing but invoices and sympathetic glances. "You've got to let him go, Joe," her sister Marlene had pleaded during their last conversation 8 months ago. "This obsession is finishing you." But obsession had structure. Obsession gave her mornings purpose. Each day began the same: check email for tips from the Find Liam Prescott website, none today, call Detective Hargrove for updates, retired last year, and scan cycling forums for mentions of young drifters matching Liam's description, 3 false leads this month alone. Her living room walls had evolved from investigation headquarters to something museum curators might call outsider art, maps overlaid with red string, weather patterns charted across seasons, testimonials from psychics she didn't believe but consulted anyway. The coffee table disappeared beneath binders of printed emails and witness statements. Her phone rang rarely these days. Friends had drifted away, uncomfortable with grief that refused to resolve itself into acceptance. Liam's former sponsors stopped returning calls after the 2nd year. Even Martin, his coach, eventually suggested a memorial race instead of another search party. Today, however, was different. October 15th, 5 years exactly. Joanne performed her morning ritual, then pulled on a weather jacket and drove to the trailhead where everything had changed. The small parking area was empty. No one remembered anymore except her. She walked to the wooden marker that had replaced the original memorial plaque after vandals had stolen it last year. Someone had left fresh flowers. Probably the teenage girls from the high school cycling team who occasionally came to pay respects to a legend they were too young to have watched compete. Joanne traced her fingers across Liam's name, worn smooth by her own frequent touch. Then she did what she always did, walked 50 paces down the trail to the exact spot where they'd found his bike. The tree was taller now, its bark healing around the small heart she'd carved into it during her darkest moment 3 years earlier. She pressed her palm against it, as if she might absorb some echo of her son's last known presence. "Where did you go?" she whispered, the question carried away by mountain wind like the thousands of times before. She stayed longer than usual, watching shadows lengthen across the trail as afternoon faded. The anniversary always hollowed her out, leaving her exhausted yet unable to sleep. As she finally turned to leave, the setting sun caught something metallic on the county road sign marking the trailhead, a brief flash that wouldn't have registered if she hadn't spent 5 years training herself to notice aberrations. The sign was standard issue, green with white lettering, warning of narrow roads ahead. Nothing special. She'd passed it countless times, but always focused on the trail beyond. Now, curiosity pulled her closer. The back of the sign faced away from the parking area, visible only if you specifically walked behind it. There, etched into the metal with what must have been a knife or screwdriver, a spiral with 7 precise notches carved along its curve. Joanne's knees buckled. She steadied herself against the signpost, heart thundering in her chest. The spiral was 7 notches, Liam's childhood code. His journal system for marking secret places and hidden thoughts. 7 notches meant important. In the private language they developed during those difficult years after his father left, when trust became their most valuable currency. No investigator would recognize this. No random hiker would understand its significance. This symbol belonged to a vocabulary of 2. With trembling fingers, she traced the etching, feeling its shallow depth. This wasn't old. The metal hadn't oxidized much around the cuts. This was recent, months, not years. "Ma'am? You okay there?" A park ranger had pulled into the lot, eyeing her with the wary concern people now regularly directed at her, the crazy mother who couldn't accept reality. "Fine," she managed. "Just remembering." After the ranger left, Joanne photographed the marking from multiple angles, then hurried home, driving 20 miles over the speed limit. In her living room, she pulled out boxes of Liam's childhood belongings, items she'd been unable to part with despite Marlene's insistence that decluttering would help with closure. At the bottom of the third box lay a stack of composition notebooks, their covers decorated with stickers from cycling competitions and energy bar companies. She flipped through them frantically until she found what she was looking for, a page from when Liam was 13, detailing his elaborate secret language. The spiral meant follow. The 7 notches meant important. Together, follow this important path. Someone had carved that symbol recently. Someone who knew their private code. Liam was alive. He was communicating. And after 5 years of silence, he wanted to be found. Sleep eluded Joanne that night. She spread Liam's childhood journals across her kitchen table, scanning each page with newfound purpose. The spiral symbol appeared repeatedly throughout his teenage years, marking hiding spots for candy, secret fishing locations, and eventually, as he grew older, alternative training routes away from prying eyes. By dawn, she'd compiled a comprehensive guide to their private language. Besides the spiral, there were stars, danger, squares, shelter, and arrows, direction. Each could be modified with notches to indicate importance or urgency. It wasn't just childish imagination, it was a sophisticated system developed between mother and son during weekend camping trips when they'd leave coded messages for each other on tree bark and smooth stones. "You beautiful, brilliant boy," she whispered, running her fingers over his neat adolescent handwriting. With trembling hands, she pulled up the digital map she'd constructed of Liam's training routes. The road sign where she'd found the spiral stood at the intersection of 3 possible paths. Which one was he indicating? She called in sick to her part-time job at the physical therapy clinic, the only employment she'd been able to maintain after depleting her savings. Her supervisor sighed audibly before agreeing. Everyone knew what day yesterday had been. By mid-morning, Joanne was back at the trailhead, this time equipped with hiking boots, water, and Liam's old compass, the one he'd used to navigate before smartphones made such tools obsolete. She examined the spiral again. The deepest notch, she realized, pointed west, toward the less popular Redridge Trail that eventually connected to an old mining road. Heart pounding, she began hiking. Every marker, every tree, every unusual rock formation became a potential message. 3 miles in, she almost missed it, a small square etched into a trail marker post, with 2 notches. According to their code, temporary shelter, moderate importance. Nearby stood an abandoned ranger station, its windows boarded but door intact. Inside, dust covered everything except for a small cleared space on the floor. Someone had been here recently. "Liam?" she called, her voice echoing through the empty structure. No answer. She searched carefully, finding nothing until she noticed a loose floorboard. Beneath it lay a faded trail map with certain routes highlighted in green marker. One path was circled repeatedly, a remote backcountry route that stretched toward the desert regions bordering Colorado and Utah. Back home, she overlaid this map with Liam's training routes. The circled path never appeared in his official training data, yet its starting point connected perfectly with his last recorded location. Had he discovered this route during his final ride? Or had he planned this all along? Sleep-deprived but energized by purpose, Joanne spent the next week retracing the highlighted trail. Each day brought new discoveries: a spiral etched into a backcountry signpost, an arrow carved into a distinctive boulder, a star with 5 notches, extreme danger, near a steep ravine that had claimed 3 hikers' lives the previous year. The messages formed a breadcrumb trail stretching over 200 miles of increasingly remote territory. Some markings were weathered, suggesting they'd been placed years ago. Others appeared fresh. He was moving, but maintaining the same path. On the 8th day, the trail led her to a small desert rest stop straddling the Colorado-Arizona border. Inside the grimy convenience store, she approached the cashier, a leathery woman with suspicious eyes. "I'm looking for someone who might have passed through here," Joanne began, showing a photo of Liam from her wallet. "My son." The woman barely glanced at the picture. "Lots of folks pass through. Don't remember faces. He might have been using the name Leo." Something flickered in the woman's expression. "No Leo here," Joanne pressed. "Please. He's been missing for 5 years." After a moment's hesitation, the woman reached beneath the counter and extracted a small plastic container labeled "Lost and Found." Inside were the usual abandoned items: sunglasses, a child's toy, several keychains. At the bottom lay a gas station receipt dated just 2 weeks earlier. "Found this by the air pump outside," the woman said. "Normally I trash it, but the note made me keep it." Joanne examined the receipt. $20 of regular gas, a protein bar, and bottled water. Flipped over, in handwriting she would recognize in darkness. "Still breathing. Still pedaling." Her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped it. "Did you see him? The person who wrote this?" The cashier shrugged. "Like I said, don't remember faces. But whoever left it knew someone would come looking. That's not normal behavior." Armed with the receipt and renewed determination, Joanne expanded her search. The trail grew warmer. At a small-town library 30 miles further south, she discovered a cycling magazine with dog-eared pages, each bent corner marking an article about young cyclists abandoning professional careers. In the margin of one page, nearly invisible unless you were looking for it, a tiny spiral. He was sending her messages only she would understand, breadcrumbs designed specifically for her to follow. 3 days later, at a remote campground, she met an elderly couple who recalled a solo cyclist passing through the previous month. "Kept to himself," the husband said, "but knew these trails better than the rangers. Told us about a shortcut when a flash flood washed out the main road." "Did he give a name?" Joanne asked, heart in her throat. "Called himself Leo," the wife answered. "Memorable because he had the same name as our grandson." The most significant breakthrough came at a dusty crossroads 50 miles into Arizona territory. There, on the back of an ancient historical marker describing long-abandoned copper mines, she found a complete message in their code: a spiral, follow, with various notches, an arrow, direction, pointing southwest, and a square, shelter, with multiple notches indicating permanent residence. After 5 years of emptiness, Joanne felt something dangerous growing in her chest. Hope. Her son was alive. He had left a trail only she could follow. And now she knew he wasn't just surviving, he had settled somewhere. The breadcrumb path was leading her directly to him, each clue a testament to the connection that distance and time couldn't sever. In a small motel room that night, she spread her maps and journals across the bed. The desert stretched endlessly outside her window, stark and unforgiving. Yet somewhere in that vastness, Liam, or Leo as he now called himself, had carved out a life. A life he was finally inviting her to discover. Tomorrow, she would follow the final arrow. Tomorrow, she might finally see her son's face again. As she drifted toward sleep, her phone rang. Detective Hargrove, retired but still checking in occasionally. "Joanne," he said without preamble. "Someone's been accessing Liam's dormant bank accounts. Small withdrawals from ATMs in northern Arizona. The bank flagged it yesterday." She smiled in the darkness. "I know." "You know?" Joanne, what have you found? The truth, she whispered. I've found the truth. The town of Burraway, Arizona, barely qualified for inclusion on maps. Nestled in the foothills of the Dragoon Mountains, its population numbered less than 300 souls, mostly retirees, artists seeking isolation, and those running from something or someone. No stoplights interrupted the single main street, and the only gas station doubled as the town's sole restaurant. Joanne arrived as sunset painted the surrounding peaks crimson. She parked outside Ray's Auto and Bike, a weathered garage with a hand-painted sign that had once been red but had faded to a dusty pink. Through the open bay door, she could see a man in his 60s hunched over the frame of a vintage motorcycle. "Excuse me," she called. "I'm looking for someone who repairs bikes." The man straightened slowly, wiping grease-stained hands on a rag. "That'd be me. Ray Delaney." His eyes narrowed. "But we're closed now. Come back tomorrow." "Not car bikes. Bicycles. Specifically high-end racing models." Ray's expression shifted subtly. He studied her face, recognition flickering somewhere behind his eyes. "Don't do much of that anymore. Most folks around here ride Walmart specials." "But you used to?" Joanne persisted. "Perhaps for someone who called himself Leo?" The silence stretched between them, charged with unspoken knowledge. "Lady, I don't know what you're after, but I mind my business in Burraway. Suggest you do the same." He turned back to his motorcycle. Joanne pulled out the gas station receipt with Liam's handwriting. "My son has been missing for 5 years. He left me a trail to follow." Ray's shoulders tensed. Without turning, he said quietly, "Some folks go missing 'cause they want to stay that way. He left me these clues for a reason." The old mechanic finally faced her again, resignation in his weathered features. "There's a cabin about 3 miles up Eagle Pass Road. Can't miss it, only structure for miles. Got a blue metal roof." He paused. "But if he ain't there, you never heard it from me." The cabin sat nestled against a hillside, partially obscured by juniper trees. A simple one-room structure with a small covered porch. No vehicle was visible, but smoke curled from a metal chimney pipe. Someone was home. Joanne parked 100 yards away, her racing heart making each step toward the cabin feel like she was moving underwater. So many scenarios had played through her mind during 5 years of searching, finding him injured, kidnapped, suffering amnesia, or worse. Never had she imagined he might be living peacefully in a hand-built home. No one answered her knock. The door, constructed of rough-hewn pine planks, swung open at her touch. Inside, the space was spare but immaculately organized. A wood stove occupied one corner. A narrow bed lined the opposite wall. A desk fashioned from reclaimed lumber stood beneath the single window, covered with notebooks and technical manuals. The cabin contained no television, no computer. A battery-powered radio and a solar lamp provided the only modern comforts. Several bicycles in various states of repair leaned against one wall, not sleek racing machines, but sturdy touring bikes built for distance rather than speed. Her hands trembled as she opened the nearest notebook on the desk. Inside, page after page of Liam's distinctive handwriting filled the margins around technical drawings and calculations. Bike frame designs, wind resistance formulas, nutrition schedules. But interspersed among the technical notes were darker reflections. Day 847, saw my face on a billboard today in Tucson. Some new energy drink I never endorsed. The company must have bought rights from my old sponsor. My signature looks real enough. Just one more piece they own. Day 1095, the nightmares are less frequent now. No more dreams of endless races I can't finish, cameras tracking my every move. 3 years gone and still they used my disappearance to sell the myth of the fallen champion. Day 1560, found an article claiming I died from a drug overdose in Mexico. Another says I joined a monastery in Tibet. The stories people create when truth isn't entertaining enough. Joanne sank onto the single wooden chair, overcome by the reality before her. Her son hadn't been kidnapped or finished. He had orchestrated his own disappearance. a meticulous escape from a life that had become unbearable. Further journals revealed the truth in painful detail. The relentless schedule of appearances, training, and competition. Sponsors who controlled his diet, his social media, even his dating life. Doctors who pushed painkillers so he could race through injuries. A coach who knew about his developing stress fractures but insisted he compete anyway. The final pages told the story of his breaking point, the discovery that his image and name were being used to promote products he'd never seen, endorsed by contracts with perpetuity clauses he hadn't understood when signing them at 18. The door creaked open behind her. Joanne turned slowly, her vision blurring with tears. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the setting sun, broader in the shoulders than she remembered, face partially obscured by a full beard. But those eyes, those were Liam's eyes, now regarding her with a complex mixture of resignation and relief. "You found me," he said simply. "I knew you would eventually." Joanne stood on unsteady legs. 5 years, Liam. 5 years of thinking you might be finished." "Liam Prescott is finished," he replied quietly. "That's who I needed to escape." He stepped fully into the cabin, setting down a canvas bag of groceries. "I'm Leo now. Just Leo." Joanne felt 5 years of grief, worry, and determination collapse into a single moment of clarity. Her son stood before her, alive, healthy, and somehow more authentic than the gleaming Olympic athlete she'd lost. The reunion she'd imagined countless times had arrived. But instead of joy, the air between them crackled with tension and unspoken accusations. Leo, not Liam anymore, closed the door behind him. "We need to talk," he said. Neither mother nor son moved to embrace. 5 years had carved a chasm between them that mere physical proximity couldn't bridge. Leo, as he now insisted on being called, lit the wood stove with practiced movements while Joanne remained perched on the edge of the wooden chair, watching him as if he might vanish again. "I made this place myself," he said finally, gesturing around the cabin. "Learned carpentry from YouTube videos on the library computer in town. Took almost a year. While I searched morgues and hospitals," Joanne replied, her voice tight. "While I sold our house to pay for private investigators." Leo winced. "I knew you'd worry at first. But I thought eventually you'd understand I needed to disappear." "Understand? You left your bike against a tree and vanished without a trace. What was I supposed to think?" The dam broke, 5 years of fear and anger pouring out. "Do you have any idea what I've been through? What it's like to wake up every morning wondering if your child is finished in a ditch somewhere?" He sat on the edge of the narrow bed, shoulders hunched. The posture reminded her painfully of teenage Liam after losing a race, withdrawn, processing disappointment inwardly. "I couldn't tell you beforehand," he said quietly. "They were watching everything. My phone, my computer, my training data. If I'd told you, they would have known." "Who? Who was watching?" "Everyone. The sponsors. The Olympic Committee. The team doctors." His voice hardened. "Do you remember the tendinitis in my left knee before nationals? The one that miraculously healed?" Joanne nodded slowly. "Your coach said it was just inflammation. It was a partial tear. They injected it with cortisone and experimental peptides so I could race. When I asked questions, they handed me NDAs to sign." He looked up, his eyes haunted. "I was 19, Mom. I didn't understand what I was signing away. So instead of fighting it, you just ran?" The accusation hung between them. "Fight who? The corporations with legal departments larger than this town? The sponsors who owned my image rights in perpetuity? The committee that saw me as a metal factory?" His laugh was bitter. "I still get royalty checks forwarded to my old address. Did you know there's an energy drink with my face on it in Japan? I've never even been to Japan." Joanne's anger faltered in the face of his obvious pain. "You could have told me. We could have faced it together. Could we?" He stood, pacing the small space. "You were so proud, Mom. Every interview, every sponsorship meeting, you were right there. When that shoe company offered the contract, you were the one who said it was the opportunity of a lifetime. The accusation struck like a physical blow. I was trying to secure your future. You were living your dream through me. The words erupted from him. After Dad left, cycling became everything. Your whole identity became Liam Prescott's mother. You pushed harder than any coach. Silence descended, broken only by the crackling of the wood stove. Outside, darkness had fallen completely, isolating the cabin in a sea of desert night. Why now? Joanne finally asked. Why leave the trail for me to follow after 5 years? Leo's expression softened slightly. I needed time to become someone else. To figure out who I am without medals and cameras. He gestured to the notebooks. I've been designing bikes. Practical ones for people who need transportation, not racing machines. I've got patents pending under my new identity. Leo Stevens, Joanne said. I found the bank account. He nodded. I had to maintain some connection to my old life to access the money. It was mine, after all. So what happens now? She asked, the question that had driven her for 5 years finally voiced. Leo sat across from her, his expression grave. That depends on you. I can't go back, not to racing, not to being Liam Prescott, Olympic silver medalist and corporate puppet. I'm not asking you to. Aren't you? His gaze was direct, challenging. Because I'm offering you a choice, Mom. You can help me finish cutting ties to my old life, liquidate the remaining sponsorship accounts, formally withdraw from the Olympic team, close out the legal obligations. Help me disappear completely. Or? Joanne prompted, sensing the alternative. Or I go public. Tell everything, the painkillers, the experimental treatments, the exploitation. I name names, coaches who knew I was injured but pushed me anyway, doctors who administered treatments without explaining side effects, companies that used my image for products I never endorsed. His voice grew harder. I've kept records. Dates, prescriptions, contracts with clauses that would never hold up under public scrutiny. Joanne stared at her son, seeing not the boy she'd raised but a stranger forged in the crucible of fame and subsequent isolation. You're blackmailing me? I'm giving you agency in this decision, he corrected. Because it affects you too. If I expose everything, you'll be implicated. The mother who didn't notice or didn't care that her teenage son was being medically manipulated for medals. The accusation hung in the air between them, too painful to acknowledge, but too truthful to deny. Had she known? Had she chosen not to see the signs? The injections explained as vitamins, the mood swings attributed to competitive pressure, the growing silence she'd attributed to focus. I just wanted you to have opportunities one never had, she whispered. I know. For the first time, compassion softened his features. But those opportunities came with invisible chains. I couldn't breathe, Mom. I was suffocating under expectations and obligations I never fully understood. Outside, a coyote howled, lonely, wild, and free. The sound hung in the air like a question awaiting answer. So which will it be? Leo asked. Help me disappear completely, or watch as I burn down the entire system that made me? Joanne looked at her son, older now, weathered by sun and hardened by solitude, but somehow more authentic than the smiling athlete who had adorned magazine covers. This was her ultimatum: accept his choice and lose the son she'd raised, or fight it and destroy both their reputations in a public scandal that would overshadow any Olympic glory. I need time to think, she said finally. Leo nodded. That's fair. But not too long. He glanced toward the door. I've stayed in one place longer than I should already. The implication was clear. He was prepared to vanish again, this time without leaving a trail. Dawn broke over the desert landscape, bathing the cabin in amber light. Joanne hadn't slept, instead spending the night reviewing the journals that documented her son's journey from celebrated athlete to solitary craftsman. The transformation was stark, the handwriting evolving from the frantic scrawl of someone fleeing to the measured script of a man who had found peace. I've made my decision, she announced as Leo emerged from his morning meditation on the porch. He poured them both coffee from a battered pot, his movements deliberate. And? I'll help you cut ties with your old life. Not because I agree with how you left, but because I understand why." She wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "You're right about me, you know. I was living through you. After your father left, your success became my purpose." Leo's expression softened. "We both got lost in it. But no more secrets between us," she insisted. "I need to know you're truly okay, not just hiding from one life but building another." He nodded slowly. "Fair enough." He retrieved a leather portfolio from beneath his mattress and spread its contents on the table. "This is who I am now." The documents revealed Leo Stevens, bicycle frame designer, with patent applications pending for sustainable transportation systems. His new identity included a GED certificate, a small business license, and contracts with 2 manufacturers in Mexico interested in his designs for low-cost, high-durability bicycles for rural communities. "I'm not hiding," he explained. "I'm just living differently. I ride every day, but for joy, not competition. I design bikes that help people, not machines that shave milliseconds off finishing times." Joanne examined the technical drawings, elegant in their simplicity, focused on function and accessibility rather than aerodynamic perfection. This was still her son's work, still infused with his passion, but directed toward helping others rather than pursuing glory. "What do you need from me?" she asked finally. "There's about $2.3 million left in various accounts: endorsement residuals, Olympic Committee stipends, investment returns. I can't access it all without raising flags." He slid across a notebook containing account numbers and passwords. "I want it donated to youth cycling programs in underserved communities. Anonymously. All of it? That's your future security." Leo gestured around the simple cabin. "I need very little to live now. And my designs are starting to generate income." His expression grew serious. "But there's one more thing, the hardest part. The press needs closure, or they'll never stop looking." The request hung between them, unspoken but understood. Liam Prescott needed to die. Over the next 3 days, mother and son formulated their plan. Joanne would access the remaining accounts through legal channels, liquidating assets gradually to avoid scrutiny. The money would establish a foundation supporting young athletes, focusing on health and education alongside athletic development. For the press, she would release a brief, final statement declaring her acceptance that her son was gone. No body, no dramatic revelation, just a mother's reluctant surrender to the inevitable conclusion. "Are you sure about this?" Joanne asked on their final evening together. "Once we do this, Liam Prescott ceases to exist completely." Leo smiled, a genuine expression she hadn't seen in years. "He already does. That person was part invention anyway, created by sponsors and media training and performance demands." He took her hand across the small table. "What I'm asking you to bury is a ghost. Leo is real." The following morning, Joanne loaded her car for the return journey. No tearful goodbyes or promises of regular visits. Such connections would risk exposing Leo's carefully constructed refuge. Instead, they established their own coded communication system, post office boxes in different states, annual deadlines for check-ins, emergency protocols if either needed the other. "Will you be happy here?" she asked as they stood beside her car, the question that had haunted her through 5 years of searching. "I already am," he answered simply. "Will you be okay letting me go? Truly letting go this time?" Joanne looked at the man before her, no longer the boy reaching for Olympic heights, but something more grounded, more authentic. "I think I already have." 1 week later, Joanne Prescott released her statement to the press. "Let the dead rest. The boy you knew is gone." She declined all interview requests, donated her son's medals to a sports museum, and sold their family home. The foundation she established, Second Wind Cycling, focused on teaching young athletes about sustainable careers, body autonomy, and the importance of identity beyond performance. Its anonymous donor remained a mystery the sports world occasionally speculated about but gradually forgot. Joanne found new purpose in teaching sports therapy at a community college, specializing in helping athletes recover from both physical injuries and psychological burnout. She never mentioned her son publicly again. Once yearly, on no particular schedule, sometimes in spring, sometimes fall, she would visit the Colorado trailhead where Liam's bike had been found. The old memorial plaque had been replaced with a simple wooden marker thanking visitors for respecting the natural environment. On the back of the marker, invisible unless you specifically circled behind it, a small spiral with 7 notches appeared each year, carved by different hands but with the same intention. It wasn't an invitation for others to follow. It was confirmation of a promise kept. Mother and son, both finally free. In her small apartment, Joanne kept only one photo of Liam, not the silver medal ceremony or any sponsored advertisement, but a simple snapshot from his 12th birthday, sitting on a mountain ridge beside his first real mountain bike. His smile in that moment had been genuine, his joy untainted by expectation. That was the son she had found again, not in the gleaming athlete manufactured for public consumption, but in the weathered craftsman who had reclaimed his right to determine his own path. Some nights, watching the sunset from her balcony, she would imagine him pedaling through desert landscapes, no finish line to cross, no clock to beat, just the rhythm of wheels against earth and the freedom of movement for its own sake. In those moments, she knew they had both won something far more valuable than any medal.